Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fortress of Solitude. Today we're going to be talking about Batman Superman World's Finest issue 49, written by Mark Waid and Mark Russell, with art by Marcus Toe, colors by Tamara Bonvillain, and letters by Steve Wands. Superman and Batman's misadventure into Earth 3 continues as 2 days before their trip, the World's Finest are battling Brainiac, who is observing a tear in reality his instruments on his ship have created, coming to the conclusion that the multiverse is indeed real and they can get into it. Superman rips into the ship and demands the villain stand down. As Batman aboard the Bat space shuttle warns Clark that the rift is widening and they need to close it before something or someone comes through. Superman blasts the controls with his heat vision, causing a system failure, but Brainiac restrains him with his tentacles. Man, I really love the old school Brainiac design getting used here. We're currently in the past, all of these stories are set in the past, so him being in the 1970s era pink shirt with the high white collar, it's a great signpost of where we are in the timeline, very early on, one of their first probably interactions with Brainiac as a team. Superman is tossed out of the ship by the tentacles, slamming hard into the Bat space shuttle, which breaks apart and causes Batman and Superman to be consumed by the rift. On the other side of the rift in Earth 3, Star Labs is also studying the rift, catching the heroes as they blast through. The scientists check on the heroes, thinking them to be Ultraman and Owlman, but Niles Corder knows these are not the villains they have come to fear. In the present, at Magnus Robotics, Batman and Superman wake up chained in the vault, with Superman realizing that they are in some parallel world where villains are heroes and heroes are villains, having used his powers to survey the surrounding area to come to that conclusion. Despite being weak, the heroes try and get loose from the chains, but hear someone coming, so they pretend to be knocked out again as Ultraman, Owlman, and Superwoman arrive to find what Star Labs, Niles Calder, and the Doom Syndicate were all so eager to get their hands on. The villains leave the heroes hanging, wanting to go clean out the rest of Star Labs and then come back for some torture, very much hoping that the heroes will fight back. I'm liking how casual this trip to Earth 3 is. There's no high stakes. It's not, fate of the multiverse, fate of the world in the balance or anything. The heroes are just kind of lost and they've got to get back home. And it's, the first time they've been to Earth 3, which is really cool. And I also like that Mark Waid and Mark Russell aren't doing the usual thing where they turn up to like an alternate Earth and they get sort of swindled by the villains of that world into thinking they're the good guys, like Ultraman and Owlman, like putting on an act or something, and then it's revealed in the third act that, they're actually the bad guys. I like that they're not going that route with them either. In fact, we're kind of getting the reverse of that, since last issue was all Ultraman and Owlman's point of view, and them, finding the heroes, the people who were there to usurp them, or they think that they're there to usurp them, and now this issue is doing the reverse of that, where we get to be with the actual heroes. Batman and Superman get ready to free themselves when someone comes back offering a hand, a quite big hand that is, as that someone is Riddler, who managed to survive his encounter with Owlman recently, although it's not without its problems as he's been horribly mutated, now with one giant arm and one little arm, which makes him look like he's been skipping arm day on only the right side of his body. I'm really happy that Riddler survived because Earth 3 had a big problem, at least up until now. It had a really big problem where, just to show like what type of world it was, all of the villains who are meant to be villains but are actually heroes were always killed off before the story that you read begins, or they're killed off early in that story to set the stakes. And I always found that a bummer because you could do so many cool things with a world where everything is reversed, where who we know as heroes are actually villains and who we know as villains are actually heroes. There's some really cool stuff you could do with that. And I like that Mark Waid and Mark Russell have realized that and be like, yeah, let's build out like a bit of a cast outside of the main crime syndicate and kind of give this world some life. And I really appreciate that. Taking all the help they can get, the heroes follow Riddler to his escape boat, told by Edward that he came for them since he figured that they were the good guys, and a lucky charm of sorts for him and the other people wanting to battle Ultraman and Owlman. The trio head through Gotham's river, telling Riddler that they need to get home, and the only way they can do that is through the rift, which Superman knows that Star Labs would be tracking. So at this point we also learn what happened to Riddler and how he survived being pushed into a vat of chemicals, which I originally thought was like molten iron or some type of molten metal. It definitely gave off that type of vibe that they were in some type of steelworks, not like a chemical plant, but I guess he got the kind of the Joker treatment. You know, he fell into a vat of ace chemicals and came out this weird mutated monster. I did like that it didn't turn him insane or anything. It just kind of gave him a giant arm and a little arm. Edward seems to be okay with what happened to him. As he puts it, what doesn't kill them makes them more driven. Something I really like. I like this new take on Riddler, and like I said before, I like that we're expanding the cast of Earth 3 outside of the crime syndicate and your usual Alexander Luthors and all of that sort of stuff. I like we're getting characters like the Riddler. Like, that's interesting. And I want to see so many different other characters, and I hope we get the chance to at some point. As Riddler finishes his tragic origin, Batman finally gets a look at this world's Gotham, finding it derelict and destroyed, something he is not impressed by. Back in Magnus Robotics, Ultraman and Owlman find the heroes have escaped and begin tracking them and finding out they didn't fly away, since Ultraman would be able to see any contrail activity, meaning they went by water down the river. So at this point in tracking a target, you'd think the heroes would, fly down through the river, just scanning, tracking, thinking of places where they could be hiding out and everything. No, this is Earth 3, so that's not what happens. Ultraman instead just merely evaporates all of the water in Gotham River, so they can just walk down through the river and continue their tracking of the heroes. Something even Owlman doesn't think is a smart move, but Ultraman doesn't care since the river was gross anyway. Stuff like this is why I like Ultraman. I don't like him because he's, evil Superman. I know that's why a lot of people like him, but I like him for stuff like this. Just this petty, villainous mustache twirling shit. He evaporated an entire town's water supply just so he can track a hero he's been hunting. Like that just feels so villainous and petty, and I love that. I love that sort of stuff. It's also why I want to see more of his interaction with just the general world of Earth 3, because we always ever see him at the start of last issue where he was just flying through the city and just burning people with his heat vision. I want to see more of that sort of stuff, but also just him just generally interacting with the world around him. It's always really fun. In a lead-lined bunker in Gotham, Superman and Batman are introduced to more of Earth 3's heroes by the Riddler, who convinces Mad Hatter, Toyman, Scarecrow, Silver Banshee, and Catwoman that the heroes are there to help and that they are from another world. Superman doesn't blame them for keeping a low profile thanks to all of the villains running rampant, but they need their help to get home since their son on Earth 3 is not charging Superman's abilities and he's getting weaker over time. So this is something I wish was a bit telegraphed more. It's mentioned earlier on that Superman's powers feel weaker and everything, but I feel like we needed that visual component. We see him earlier on mention that he used his super senses to figure out that this world is topsy-turvy, but I would have liked a visual sequence where he sees that and you see his vision fading, his x-ray vision fading, he can't look through walls as well or can't punch through things as well because his power is fading, so he's got to kind of conserve energy while he can. It just should have been telegraphed a little bit better. The heroes want to know that once Batman and Superman are back on their world, will they come back and help with some backup? And Superman promises they will, although multiversal travel is brand new to them, so it might take them a while. So this leads into Crisis of Earth 3, which Mark Waid wrote about in the history of the DCU, and I feel like since that book has already been written, we might be getting a bit of a redo, a bit of an updated history version of it, because that's a book that was written in the 60s by Gardner Fox. So I can imagine Waid wanting to kind of redo it and add the Riddler and all of these other characters that he's created and fit it more neatly in the current DCU. Because I think right now, I don't think the actual Crisis of Earth 3 book from the 60s is actually canon to all of this. It's those events did happen. There's just not an actual modern book that covers it. So I could see them wanting to do that again. And it feels like we're getting that, especially with them setting up the world and everything and all these other heroes heroes that are running around now, all these villains who are now heroes. I feel like we're setting up for something to happen somewhere down the line, be it in this book or like an overall DCU event. The heroes all think that they are way too underpowered to aid Batman and Superman, but Scarecrow thinks that the experimental hallucinogens he's been putting in his fear gas should give them a bit of an edge in their fight. The team begins their plan, which starts with a diversion, which sees the heroes break into Arkham Asylum, dosing the guards with fear gas and breaking out Two-Face and other people Owlman and the villains don't want to have to deal with. The villains soon turn up to deal with the mass breakout, as at Star Labs, Batman, Superman, and Riddler break into the control center and begin to try and locate the rift. Back at Arkham, the villains really put the hurt on the heroes of Earth 3, with Ultraman burning Scarecrow for taking what is theirs, him referencing the prisoners as he sees them as just their assets. Superman notices that the villains took the bait a bit too quickly and he wants to go and help the other heroes, but Riddler tells him to keep focused, but Superman speeds off, leaving Batman and the Riddler to track the rift together. And Batman apologizes for Superman since in moments of crisis, he is oblivious to anything that is not a cry for help. Superman arrives in the nick of time to save Scarecrow, telling Ultraman that he's punching down, so why doesn't he see if he can pick on someone his own size? Of course, the Earth 3 villains don't play fair, and Superwoman's timely arrival means Superman is tied up in her lasso of submission, and Ultraman smashes him out of the roof of the asylum. There's kind of a sly line, which is sort of confirmed a little later on in the issue, where we learn that Lois is pregnant with Ultraman's child, which means there might be a future story where Ultra Boy or, an Ultra Son is wandering around, and I have to assume Wade will no doubt get to write that somewhere, since why do you set that sort of stuff up if you don't have a story in mind for that? And there's legs there, Ultraman sending him after John as some type of retribution, Superman and Batman coming back to this world and finding it's progressed even more, and there's, the Ultraman family or something kicking around. There's definitely legs there, and I can't wait to see if Wade actually pulls through on those. Superman manages to evade Owlman and Superwoman, returning to help the heroes and block Ultraman's heat vision, grabbing the villain's cape and swinging him hard into a wall. Batman, meanwhile, has suited up in a spacesuit for their journey home, telling Riddler to hurry up as Superman is almost out of juice. Superman, meanwhile, learns that Superwoman is pregnant when she uses that knowledge against him, making him hesitate for a moment, and it lets Ultraman get the better of him. As the villains pummel the depowered Superman, Silver Banshee comes to his aid along with the other heroes, surprising the villains and even Superman since they stuck around to help out. Catwoman tells him that he stuck around, so they are as well. Thanks to Silver Banshee's ear-splitting scream, the villains are knocked out, but only for a moment, but it gives the heroes and Superman enough time to escape. Superman returns to Batman, donning his own spacesuit and blasting off into the rift, but not before Batman tells Riddler thanks and that he needs to keep fighting the good fight. Riddler soon gets in contact with Mad Hatter, who thinks they should all go their separate ways and lay low, but Riddler has no intention of doing any of that, since they heard of a certain Swamp Thing terrorizing Louisiana, and they need to go and deal with it, meaning this is the creation of what I assume will become their version of the Justice League. As a great tease for the things to come in Earth 3, again, this book was just full of things and signposts that say, hey, we're going to be returning to this world in the very near future, and I'm looking forward to it. I adore Earth 3. I love the concepts. It's such a simple, early comics concept. Everything is the opposite. And it just works. It just works so well. And I'm looking forward to seeing if Mark Waid gets to tell that story or if someone else gets to venture into Earth 3 and this Earth 3, him and Mark Russell set up in this issue. World's Finest issue 49 was a fun little ending to Batman and Superman's time on Earth 3. I like how low stakes it was. Usually when Earth 3 is involved, there's world-ending threats, timeline-ending threats, multiverse ending threats. But this time it was just heroes trying to get home, and I really appreciate the low stakes of that. It also gave Mark Waid and Mark Russell a chance to explore Earth 3 a little bit and kind of build out the cast and get away from the crime syndicate and show us some of the heroes of this world. I really like what they did with Riddler, positioning him as kind of like the leader of this new version of the Justice League of Earth 3. I'm intrigued to see if we actually get to see more of that, since both Marks did really good jobs of explaining things and kind of signposting little things here and there that could lead to something bigger down the line, and I really hope it does. I fucking love Earth 3 and I love getting to explore more of it. I'm going to give this issue an 8 out of 10.